Runsmith Enterprises presents episode 17 of Topics in Endurance Sports. I'm your host, Tim. Today is Monday, May 21st, 2018. Today's topics are going to be two races that I did about a month ago. One is the Hawkeye 50K in Iowa, and the other is the Backside Trail Marathon in Kentucky. If you'd like to find some more information about me, please check out my website at runsmith.net. That's runsmith.net. You can find my other information. For example, I have a Facebook group called Runsmith Enterprises. Please join the group. I don't post a whole lot. Usually it's like a reminder if an episode has come out. I'll do that. And also something I just find interesting or inspirational, but anyone can post. So it's not a hugely active group, but there you go. Twitter, you can find me at RunsmithE. RunsmithE, all one word, of course. That's for Runsmith Enterprises. RunsmithE. Instagram, Tim C. Smith 1961. Tim C. Smith 1961. Email, chemsmith1@gmail.com. Like the beginning of the word chemistry. chemsmith1@gmail.com. All of that is on my website. And lastly, you can find out about my coaching services. Yes, I'm a coach, so if you'd like to get going in running or like to improve your running, please let me know. This episode is brought to you by Cycling for Lupus. This is an adventure that is going to be attempted by a friend of mine named Keith. He's going to do a race across America on bike. Okay, a bike race across America, and he has a website called cyclingforlupus.org. Actually, I'm not exactly sure. I think that's it. If you just type Cycling for Lupus in Google, you'll probably come across it. And he is trying to raise awareness and to raise funds. So please check that out. I believe that begins in about 2 weeks from today. So please check that out. Cycling for Lupus. If you have any interest in lupus or any other autoimmune diseases, this is something you should be interested in. All right. What do we have from last time? Last time I covered the Buzzard Day 50K in Ohio and the Knoxville Marathon, a regular road marathon. I forgot to mention who won the Knoxville Marathon, so I just thought I'd mention these people. The marathon itself, the male winner was 32-year-old Brian Morseman of Bath, New York. So he came quite a ways. His time was 2:27:11. In the women, it was a little confusing. They had two different winners depending on where you looked. So if you looked at overall females, it was 38-year-old Gina Rouse of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where the race was. Her time was 2:56:33. But then if you looked at the leaderboard, it said it was like the top 10. It said it was 27-year-old Missy Showers, also of Knoxville, in 3:04:49. So I don't know why she was not listed as the winner. I'm sorry, I don't know why Gina Rouse was not at the top of the leaderboard. So either way, those two runners are fast. For the men in the half marathon, it was 29-year-old Christian Thompson of Ottawa, Tennessee. Not sure I say that right. His time was 1:09:48. And for the women, 27-year-old Stephanie Cloutier, I'm going to go with. It looks French. Maybe it's Clouter, but it looks like, maybe it's Cloutier. I don't know. Elk Mound, Wisconsin, 1:23:03. Those are all really good times because if you listen to the episode, I told you that was a rather hilly marathon, much more hilly than I would have guessed. All right, let's get into today's topics. The first one is the Hawkeye 50K, which I ran over a month ago. Yes, again, I'm behind on my podcasts, on my episodes. That just seems to be a theme. I'm going to try to pump out 2 of them here in the next week if I can. Because I've done a race since these 2 that I'm covering today. So the first one's the Hawkeye 50K. This was run on Saturday, April 14th. It begins in the city of Solon, Iowa, which is right next to Iowa City, which is where the University of Iowa is. So I should note that that's where my daughter lives, and I graduated from the University of Iowa myself. I lived there on and off. Oh boy, probably almost 10 So I don't know, I'd have to calculate. 10 years. 10 years of my life. No, 15, something like that, have been spent in Iowa City. I was a student there, and I also taught at the University of Iowa as well. So, and my daughter is there. She just graduated from the University of Iowa as well. So I'm very familiar with this area. So the race starts in Solon, Iowa, which is like 10 miles outside of Iowa City. Along with the 50K, there's also a 25K. It's just going to be a 25K loop, basically, that you can do either once or twice, depending on which race you're doing. The packet pickup was Friday night before the race at We Run. That's the name of a running store, so a little plug for them. We Run of North Liberty, Iowa. North Liberty is also a few miles from the Iowa City is Iowa City and Coralville. They're like two cities kind of on top of each other. And North Liberty is kind of outside of Coralville. Solon's more outside of Iowa City, kind of. And anyway, the packet pickup was at We Run in North Liberty. The good folks at We Run are also the race directors. Brian and Chris Tharp are the race directors. And there I got a shirt, which I'm holding up, which I'm going to hold up to the camera. And for those of you who don't know, this episode will be on YouTube. I just record myself doing it, and I put it on YouTube. So if you want someone to see the episode or listen to it, but they don't do podcasts, you can tell them to get on YouTube, and it'll be there. It usually takes me about a week or less to get it up on YouTube. So anyway, I'm holding this shirt up to the camera. It's pretty cool. It's black. I like black. It's got these awesome Hawkeye claws on it. All right. I will note that the shirt does cost extra, or if you want to look at it, it's optional, which is kind of a good thing, right? You don't have to get the shirt if you don't want. You can decide to not get the shirt. That's your thing. See, I got my bib, which I just happen to be number 100, which is kind of cool. So it's a personalized little Hawkeye bib, which is kind of nice. We also got a hat. Everyone got a hat. I don't think you had to pay anything extra for that. We just got the hat. I love hats. So this is a black hat. It says Hawkeye 50K. It's a cool looking hat. I do like that. That night, I spent the night at my friend Casey O'Connor's house. He lives in Mount Vernon, which is another 10 miles outside of Solon. And he lives there, and I spent the night with him. Thank you very much, Casey. That was great. So I didn't have to go so far. I didn't have to get a hotel or anything like that to go to the race in the morning. It was only like 15 minutes away. So I got up, I think, around 5:15 or something like that. I always get up way early. I think the race started at 8. But I was up early because I always do that, and probably left around 6 and was there around 6:15 or something like that. I always get to races really early. Maybe I was there by 6:30. I don't know. In the morning, on Saturday morning, and the weather was predicted to be pretty nasty, and it was pretty nasty. So just to give you an idea, for all of you who saw the Boston Marathon was 2 days after this, and we had the same weather. Okay, and I'll note as I go through here, it was not as bad as the Boston Marathon, and I'll tell you why. But it was that same driving, windy rain that the Boston Marathon had. Could theirs have been worse? I don't know exactly the wind speed and the volume of rain. That I don't know. But it was the same idea, and it was probably going through Iowa on its way to New England, basically. So basically, it was in the 30s, driving, wind, rain, and at times it was really difficult. But again, I'll let you know about how, when and where that kind of came into play. So I did run with some like leg tights. I got these black tights that I run. They don't really do a whole lot for warmth, but just a little bit, which helps. And I have this Solomon hooded rain jacket that I got at a race once. They gave it away. I love it. It's really light, and it's more rain resistant than rain proof, although it seems to keep me pretty dry. It's super, super light. I mean, you can ball this thing up into nothing, into a little tiny ball. It weighs almost nothing. So that's what I wore during the race, and it also even has a little hood, so it keeps your head dry. So I wore that the whole race, which is really nice. So yeah, the 50K started at 8 o'clock. We had an 8-hour cutoff, and the 25K started at 8:30. So they're going to do one loop, and they start about a half hour later than the 50K. So what is the course for this race like? First of all, the shape of the course is basically a 12.5 mile loop. Okay, it's a 15.5 miles per lap, right? But it's a 12.5 mile loop, and at some point in that loop, you run another little baby loop that's about 3 miles. So a loop with a bubble on it. All right, can you imagine that? And you run counterclockwise, and you're basically going around a lake, Lake McBride. It's not always right on your left, but it is on your left. You may not see it right on your left, but it's there. Sometimes you're running right on the shore, and other times you're not. Another way to look at this is that it's a figure 8, but it's a very weird figure 8. It's a figure 8 with a gigantic circle and a little baby circle. And you can imagine this. Let's say you start at noon. All right, so look at a clock. Imagine you're starting at noon. Run counterclockwise to about 8. And that's where the first aid station is. So the aid station is about every 5 miles or so. Okay, so run counterclockwise to 8. You got an aid station. Keep going to 4. You got another aid station. And that's where the bubble is. All right, so you run about 2/3 of the big loop. And then there's the bubble. The bubble's about 3 miles. And you come right back to 4 o'clock again. And you're back at that aid station. And then you continue running 3, 2, 1 to noon again. Can you picture that? So start at noon, run counterclockwise. And at 4 o'clock, you'll do a little bubble and come right back to it. So you'll hit these 8. There's an aid station at the start-finish at noon, an aid station about 8 o'clock, an aid station at 4 o'clock that you hit twice, and then back to noon. So roughly every 5 miles, except that little bubble, it's only about a 3-mile bubble, and you're back to it. All right, can you picture all that? On top of that, this course is interesting, unique in that it has a variety of surfaces. So the first part up to that first aid station, most of it is crushed gravel right along the shore of Lake McBride, right along the shore. And it's pretty darn flat. You got these baby little ups and downs here and there. You got a little bit of park road in the middle. There's about a 1/4 mile at one point. And at the end of it, coming to that first aid station is about another 3/4 of a mile of park road. And that's where the aid station is. But most of it is crushed gravel, very nice to run on, unless there's been a ton of snow or rain and it's kind of rutted or anything like that. But even though it was rainy, that wasn't really an issue. The gravel was in pretty good shape. So you do this first third of the race on crushed gravel, most of it. Then you cross after you get to the aid station, there's another mile or so of crushed gravel. Okay, then you get to you get to a spillway. You have to cross the lake. The lake spills into the Iowa River, and there's a spillway there. There's a big earthen dam. You run across that, and then right at the end of it, about a 50-yard wide spillway. So if the lake gets too high, it will go into the river. This is always interesting because every time this race is put on, everyone is wondering how high the spillway is going to be, because if the lake is low, you can walk across the spillway and you don't get your feet wet at all. It's just nothing but rocks. You just walk across it. If it's really high, it's rushing water and will knock you over pretty much. So one time in this race's history, they've had to reroute it because the water was so high. They had to redo it and not cross the spillway. So it's anywhere between those two extremes. This time it was pretty low. You could go across about 45 yards of it, and the last 5 yards there was water. If you wanted, you could pick your way. There was this kind of convoluted way to go down and around and pick your way and not go through that water. I didn't worry about it. I just went through the water. Okay, so it's up to you how you want to deal with it when it's kind of on the edge like this. A lot of people were going down and around to avoid the water, and when you go through it, you're completely in it. It's up over your ankles, and both feet are going to get wet. So that's what I chose to do. I didn't really care. It's good practice to run with wet feet. And actually, right when you go through that water, there's kind of this sketchy little cliff you got to walk for about 10 yards. And then you got to climb up this hill, a little bit of using your hands maybe to get up this little hill. And then you go up these steps, and they're like straight up. But it's not a big deal. It gives you a little walk break to do that. Then when you're up those steps, then there's about 1.7 miles of dirt trail. It's kind of like double wide dirt trail, not single track, but pretty wide dirt trail, like a snowmobile type trail. They actually use it for cross-country skiing in the winter. So you run that, and that's very undulating, right? Up and down and up and down. If you're a really good runner, you'll run the whole thing. If you're like me, you're walking some of these hills. They're steep enough and just long enough you're walking. If I was doing one loop, I wouldn't walk, I think. But doing two loops, I knew I needed to conserve. So I walked those hills, some of the hills. And they're very small hills, but they're enough. And that's about 1.7 miles. And then you're at that second aid station. All right, where I'm saying it's like 4 o'clock. You're at that second aid station. At that point, you do this little around a 3-mile bubble. And that's a variety of this kind of wide dirt path and a little bit of park road and a little bit of grass path and single track. It's everything you have in there, kind of one after the other. The single track, kind of the gnarliest part of the course, is the single track for a couple of miles in the middle of this. And there's some up and downs and some little steep hills and a few rocks and roots and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice if you're a beginner to do this race, because you can see all these different surfaces you're getting, and you get just a little bit of that gnarly technical part. So you get yourself used to that. So you get through all that, and there's another grass part again, and so forth. And then you're back at that aid station, at aid station 4. At that point, you do about another mile of a wide dirt path. You get on the park road. You've got about 3.5 or something miles to go. You run down a park road for about 3/4 of a mile, and then you get on a highway. You actually run on a road for about 2.5 miles or so on a highway. You're on the edge of it. Cars are going 55 miles an hour, fairly close to you, but there is an edge. You're not nervous or anything. I guess it may be a drunk driver swerve, they could kill you, but there's never been a problem. And there's a little tiny gravel path, if you want, about a foot wide, and you can run on that sometimes. But you're on that for about 2.5 miles. There's one hill in the middle of it, and on top of that, all of it's a very slight gradual uphill. And then when you get done with that, you got about a half a mile where you turn into the city of Solon and go back through a big long parking lot to the start-finish. All right, so that's a long explanation, but at the start-finish is a lodge, a circular lodge, so you can go in the morning if it's cold or anything like that, so that's nice. Gigantic parking lot. Parking lot is not, you have no issues with parking whatsoever. I've almost never been to a race where there's so little issue with parking. A big, huge parking lot right at the start. That's really nice. I'll tell you about the rain right now. So here's how the rain worked. It was kind of unfortunate in the direction the rain was going. So when you were running with the rain behind you, you were generally in the woods, like on that crushed gravel path. You got the lake on the left and trees on your right, or most of the time the wind was kind of at your back, so you did not get any benefit out of it. On the other hand, the woods, it really didn't even feel like it was raining. It was kind of weird, even though it was, but you didn't feel it that much. It was not a downpour at all. It was kind of hard to describe this rain. It's almost like sleet, because it was, in the mid 30s. It was almost more like sleet, small pellets of rain. When you crossed the spillway, it was hitting your left side of your face really hard, and you were kind of getting blown off that area, going over the dam. Then you get back through all the woods again, not a problem. When it hit you, it was on that road, and unfortunately, you were running right into it. I say unfortunately because that's the most exposed part of the race. You've got no trees or anything nearby, so we're running straight into the wind, going up that hill, and then the gradual uphill for about 2.5 miles or so, right into the wind. And I am telling you, wow, it was something. We were all just bent over. Like you see comedy videos of people in in New York with a really windy day, and they're like trying to walk and they can't. They're getting blown backwards. That's what it was like. We're all bent over at like 90 degrees, trying to run. A lot of people just walking because they just gave up. You're trying to run, and even if you're running, you're almost at a walking pace. And the wind was so strong and coming right at you and blowing rain right in your face. So your head's bent down, because if you lift your head up, you're just getting pelted with these little tiny bullets of rain. So it was something. It was like a half hour. You're just fighting through this extremely strong wind. And I'm not joking when I said a couple of times I kind of stood up and took a no step. In other words, the wind was so strong, I like lifted my leg to take a step and went nowhere. I just went right back down. It was almost blowing me backwards. I don't want to overstate that, but it was really, really strong. However, like I said, this is not as bad as Boston, because Boston, they had to do the whole 26.2 miles of that. We had a total of about 6 miles of this. If you did 2 loops, the 25K had a total of about 3 miles or something. So I'm not going to say it's as bad as Boston. They had to do that all day long for 26.2 miles. They were running into it. We had to do it, or at least it sounds like they were doing it a lot. We only had to do it for this one part, but it was at the very end of the loop. So right when you were most tired. It was worse on the first loop than the second loop, a little bit. Not a huge difference, a little less rain on the second loop, but still at the end of that 50K, to be fighting through that loop was fighting through that wind right at that time. It was just kind of like, well, why can't the wind be going the other direction, So the part where we're exposed, it could be pushing us. But hey, that's what makes for an epic fun day, right? So that's it. That kind of describes the course. There's not anything particularly amazing to say about how my day went. All I tried to do was conserve as much energy as I can, in the sense that I wanted to keep a nice, kind of steady pace. I've done this race before a few years ago. So I just wanted to be able to still be running a little bit at the end. So I just tried to take it really conservative as best I could, kind of, measure out my energy. The aid stations are fine. They've got all these aid stations. They've got all the foods you need: peanut butter and jelly, and M&Ms and chips, and I believe they had some gels. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly if they had gels. I seem to have mental blocks about remembering what's at aid stations. But the fact that I don't remember is good. That means there was nothing like totally lacking. They have water and a sport drink. I think it was just Gatorade. I can't even remember that again. Sorry. Could have been something else. I had 2 water bottles with me. I had my Timothy Olsen Ultimate Direction Hydration Vest, 2 water bottles up front, just kept one with water, one with sport drink. That's fine. I always take like a gel every hour. It's my general thing. I'm not a huge eater in races. And then I nibble at aid stations, whatever strikes my fancy, whether it's salty or M&Ms or peanut butter and jelly. I love peanut butter and jelly. I'm trying to remember how if they had peanut butter and jelly and managed to keep it dry. I think one aid station, they had a cover, so they were okay, at least. The other one, I'm not sure they had a cover, so I think they were fighting to keep everything dry. But they had everything I needed. So whatever they did it right, because I have no complaints. They kept everything dry enough, and actually 2 of the aid stations had covers at least. So it was fine. They were well manned and everything. I should also notice the course, no chance of getting lost at all. Not only like in the crushed gravel, you could almost not mark it and do it, but they do. They mark it totally well marked. On the trail part, there are some places where you can go different directions, perfectly well marked with the ribbons, following the turn that you're going to take. Absolutely no way to get lost in this race. So it's a really good beginner 50K. Really good. It's not 100% flat. Like I said, it's got a bit of everything. I would absolutely recommend it if you or a friend want to do your first 50K or maybe your first trail race, because it's not all trail. You got some road, crushed gravel, some trail, you got a little bit of technical. Beautiful race for kind of a beginner. Great training race. What if you're training for something longer? Absolutely fantastic training race. And some people have done some hugely fast times. Scott Gall, I believe, holds the course record, and it's in the 3:20. Scott Gall is a fantastic runner out of Iowa, and he's been in the Olympic trials, for example, in the marathon, and has been a winner at snowshoe races, a national champion snowshoe racer. And he's got the course record in the 3:20s, I think. That is darn fast. So you can run, if you're a really good runner, you can run this fast. If the course conditions are good, all right? It's early April. You could have bad weather, but the course conditions were okay. It was muddy on the second lap in some spots. It was muddy. There was some slippery in that trail section in the back. there were some slippery downhills and such, but they weren't long or horrible. But I was kind of like sliding a little bit, holding on to branches a couple times, trying to get down these little hills. But generally, not a gigantic problem. Let's see, anything else just about the race? Like I said, I just tried to run steady, I guess, all day long. I generally ran by myself. That's what I normally do, but every now and then I might be next to someone chit-chatting for a little bit. I'm just looking at my notes here. Anything else? That's about it. I think I've pretty much described this race. Pretty short description in a sense, or a short overview of my race, but there's not a whole lot to say because it's not an extremely difficult race, so it's not like huge obstacles to get through. Other than in this case, this race will go down in history. This particular one, because of the wind and rain, it was really something, and so it's going to kind of go down as one of the more crazy weather races. This race has been going for about 8 years, and it has a history of some crazy conditions and crazy weather. The last time I did it a couple years ago was fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. My watch said that there was about 2,900 feet of up and down, so that is not nothing, okay? And compared to the marathon I did last week that I said was hilly, was 1,200. So this is over twice that and just a little bit longer. So, yeah, you get your ups and downs in this. You get a little workout there. It's nothing compared to mountains. But, hey, don't be thinking Iowa is 100% flat. It is not at all. Get out on your bike and bike the country roads, and you will find out Iowa is not flat. It's not mountains, but it's not flat. How about some times? My time. I did the first lap, the first 25K in about 2 hours and 48 minutes, and the second lap in 3:05. That's not bad. I was only 17 minutes slower for the second lap. So that's pretty good. I normally have my camera and take pictures in races. Not this time because of the rain, so I never got the camera out to take any pictures. My total time was 5:53:51. So breaking 6 hours is usually good for me in a 50K. I have done my fastest is low fives, 5:05, 5:10 or so, but I'm getting older, so that's getting harder to do. So these days, if I break 6, I'm pretty happy. So this is a good race to do that. I think last time I did this race a couple years ago, better weather, and I think it might have taken me over 6, a little over 6. Maybe I'd have to look. So I was pretty happy. I didn't think, when I did the first one at 2:48, I didn't think I'd finish under 6 hours. I figured I'd slow up more than that. So I'm pretty happy with that. That makes it my pace 11:23 per mile, for what that's worth. I was the 31st of 59 finishers, so you can see actually slightly in the back half. Not that fantastic. The 26th of 45 males, definitely in the back half. 12 of 24 in my age group. They only had like 2 age groups, I guess, or 3, I don't know. My age group was male 40 and over. So I'm 56, completing with these, a lot of people. So I was 12 out of 24 for what that's worth. So 5:53 was my time, 5:53:51. The winners of the race, 37-year-old Ross Salinas of Iowa City. He's a friend of mine. He did it in 3:57:10. Ross is a really good runner. Has a lot of wins or high finishes, in some very good races in some cases. 3:57:10. That's quite a good time for that day, because I'm sure, like all of us, the wind slowed him down. Second place, 31-year-old Kenny Slocum of McGregor, Iowa. And third place, 32-year-old Jacob Miller of North Liberty, Iowa. In the women, it was 31-year-old Kathy Miller of Coralville, which is, again, right next to Iowa City. Coralville, Iowa, 5:09:23. 39-year-old Danielle Wags. She's a friend of mine, but I can never quite say her last name. Wangsness. Sounds good, Danielle. Danielle Wangsness of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And 40-year-old Terry Remhoff of Byron, Illinois, which is about 60 miles away in Illinois, just across the Mississippi River. So almost every one of those people are in their 30s, except for Terry Remhoff, who's exactly 40. So I guess if you want to do well in this race, do it while you're in your 30s. That's the key. For the 25K, the winner was 31-year-old Mike Stout of Cedar Falls, 148.59. That's cooking. That's actually really darn good. 40-year-old Alexander Fry of Lisbon, Iowa, not far away either. 39-year-old Steve Karanakolis of Iowa City, Iowa. In the women, 30-year-old Danielle Hodge of Iowa City, 152.15. By the way, she was second overall. This is probably the performance of the day right here. Second overall in the 25K, Danielle Hodge, 152.15. 50-year-old Joanne Sackett of Des Moines was second. That's probably the other performance of the day. She was fourth overall. 50-year-old Joanne Sackett was fourth overall in the 25K. Another fantastic performance. And third place, 35-year-old Brittany McConnell, also a friend of mine of Iowa City. They also have a ruck division. Now, I don't know a lot about rucking. To me, all it means, it seems to have a military connotation to it, but I don't think you have to be in the military. I don't think. Or former military. To me, it just means you wear a backpack, and it's got some weight in it. So I don't know if there's like a certain amount of weight it has to be, or it must be. It'd be pointless to wear an empty backpack. Anyway, there's a ruck division to this, and for the 50K, 39-year-old Michael Durkin of Valparaiso, Indiana, he came quite a ways, did it in 5:13:30. That's running. I mean, that is fast. If you're carrying a big backpack. No women did the 50K ruck. In the 25K ruck, 32-year-old Daniel Bruss, B-R-U-S, of Bloomfield, I don't know where Bloomfield, Iowa is. He did it in 3:37:24. And 40-year-old Katie Green of Solon, Iowa, where the race is held, in 4:20:47. I'm assuming they just hiked it, which I think is what most of these people do, except for that 39-year-old Michael Durkin, who obviously ran the 50K to finish it that fast. And that was it. That was my day. So afterwards, we went to a Mongolian grill with my daughter and her boyfriend, Jonathan. Pigged out completely. Very satisfying run. Didn't break any records, but it was a great training race for a race I had coming up 2 weeks later, which I will talk about in the next episode. I did get an interview with my friend Casey, who I stayed with. So let's listen to that. He mentions in here, I'll talk about it afterwards. Let's listen to what Casey has to say. Okay, I'm talking to my friend Casey O'Connor, who just did the Hawkeye 50K.
That's right.
How many times do you think you've run this race?
I think this is my 8th one.
Really? There have only been 8, I think.
Well, then is it 7? To start in 2010, I did not do that one, and then I started in 2011.
So you've probably done 7 of 8. I think there's been 8 of them.
Okay, then that must be it. Okay.
Ah, impressive. So, forgetting the conditions, how do you like this course? How would you describe this course? And
I think
you like it?
I think so. So most of my trail running comes from. I moved here from Phoenix in 2010, so the trails out there can be pretty tricky, and this is one of those areas where the terrain is on par with a strong trail run, especially the back end parts where the road parts are. What was that? Maybe a third of the race. So it's still a fun route, and I tend to run on the in the gravel when I'm on the road portions of it, just because I try and just some sort of purist thing or something. I don't know why I do that, but it feels more comfortable. But when you're on the trail itself, especially past the spillway, the ups and the downs, and it's a nice area, and the woods are nice, and there's deer, and and there's a group that runs the Thursday running group,
right?
And those guys are out here. So when you come out here, they're out there Thursday morning, like at 4:30 in the morning, and when they do that, man, it's pitch black. There's nothing else out here, and you have the whole place to yourself. So that's when you're to really it's just you and the trail. Whether it's pitch black or in the middle of the daytime, it's always been a nice area. Yeah. And there's other stuff out here too. There's other things and attractions in the area that make it nice.
Right. So how did today's race go for you? I guess maybe compared to your other ones.
I'll tell you what. So last year I PR'd. Last year I don't remember my time, but it was my best time. This is my slowest.
Really?
Yeah. This year was.
Was it your condition? Or was it kind of the court? It was rainy and a little muddy.
Yeah, everything. Seriously, when it comes to these things, the best thing you can do coming into a race is your preparedness, because you can control that, right? So I wasn't as prepared as I should have been from a training standpoint. My nutrition was not on point. I didn't eat enough food the night before. I went out kind of strong. So it's okay, though, because I have a bigger race coming up in a couple of weeks. That I use this one to kind of even though it was tough and I was tired, for me, it was this is a finishing stick-to-it race. Where, as opposed to I wasn't trying to win it. I didn't worry about that. But today's conditions were, well, it's trail running, It was brutal. There was a headwind. That was the nastiest headwind I've ever run through. The first loop, there was the ice pellets were, hitting you in the face, and it was just, I tried putting my hood on my head. The wind took that right off. That nothing was working out in that regard. So you just muddle through it, and and that's the joy of the sport, is that you can't predict how you're going to fare in these events, and that's why it's fun.
Right. So did you bring any food with you, or were you just eating from the aid stations?
Just the aid stations.
Yeah.
And I brought one handheld bottle that I've learned. For this event, it's very well supported, so the aid stations are always well taken care of. The distance between them, and unless it's a very hot day, one handheld for me has done the trick. And the variety of food and the nutrition that they have there, it's bountiful.
If you when you're doing your other trail races, if it's a little longer, do you carry gels and stuff?
I do.
If you need to?
I do, especially in the one I'm going to be doing in Arizona in a couple of weeks, called the Hawkeye 50K.
Right.
And that's one where I'll have an actual pack with me.
Right.
And I'll have gels and goos, and I'll probably have as many as 4 handhelds. I'll keep 2 in my little in the sleeves, and then I'll actually walk with 2.
It's be nice and hot there, possibly.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's when and being in Iowa and training in a lot of the cooler conditions, when you head back to Phoenix and all of a sudden it's hot, stuff gets real, and it gets real quick.
Yeah. So I know you just bought a pair of Saucony Peregrines.
Yeah.
They work out okay?
They did. You know what? They had probably about a mile on them before the event. So the thing I found is good socks. You have in any of the good running socks that have the double layers on them.
Right.
That keeps the friction down, and invest $8-10
Which
a pair.
socks did you wear today?
That brand right there. What is that?
Balega, maybe?
That's it, yeah.
Balega, okay.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. Thank you. I couldn't remember. But I bought those, and then I bought these. I bought them over. We run the day I got the packet.
Yeah.
Because I knew my older ones were, well, they're old.
The second loop, it was muddy enough. There were some steep downhills that were muddy.
Yeah.
Did these help keep you from sliding down the hill a little?
Not really. It wasn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure any shoe makes much of a difference if it gets
What I've learned is that you have to So I was a little stiff today. And so going down was kind of hard in the midsection, just the hips and everything was stiff. But I found that if you lean into it, you typically are going to be better off when you try and slow down and stand up straight.
That's what I do.
Yeah, you're going to go out. They go out from under you, man. They go out. So the main thing, and then the same thing I do with this trail is tricky enough that you can really focus on your footwork. Same where you have your form, kind of, I think it's that pose position type thing where you kind of run up on the balls of your feet.
Right.
You lean forward and let gravity do a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
When I'm in my best shape, that tends to really help me perform my best.
Right.
But when you get tired, you kind of lean back, and then you lose that efficiency.
I'm a poor downhill runner.
Oh, forget it, man.
Yeah.
I know guys that are bombers. I'm not one of them.
Yeah. All right, so you got one good last 31-mile run for your race in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be. I'll fly to Phoenix on the 21st, and just it'll be a week of acclimating to the heat. Even though I'll be in the valley before I head up north for the races, and then. But the nice thing about that one is going to be, I still have time to kind of beat myself up a little bit, and just like today, it's like. I don't care if it's cold. I don't care if it's rainy.
Right.
You got to keep moving.
You've done this before, though, haven't you? I think Hawkeye 50.
Yeah.
How many times have you done it?
I have finished it 1 time. I've attempted it 3.
So do you have family there? Is that why you go there fairly often? Okay.
Yeah. I moved to Iowa for work back in 2010. So I have a lot of roots back in Phoenix.
Do you have a free place to stay and everything?
Oh yeah, sure. Yep.
That's nice. Plus, Phoenix is probably You can get direct flights. Where do you fly from?
I fly out of Eastern Iowa Airport. I take Allegiant. It's one of those airlines that like the tickets are cheap and everything's great unless there's a canceled flight because they only have that one flight. Because the plane flies from Phoenix with a load of people, drops them off, and then picks up people and then goes right back.
Wow!
And then that's it. And they don't. It's not like other airlines where they have all these other options.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's the only direct flight that I know of.
Yeah, nice.
Out of here.
You have any other races this summer or fall that you're thinking about? Or
I thought about the one, the 24-hour track one.
Yeah.
And
the Corn Belt?
Corn Belt.
Corn Belt, yeah. That's on my radar too, but it's never fit my schedule.
I know. I did it one time, and my goal, that was my first 100-miler, sub 24. And I went out, and that was a fun event because it was a training. It was one of the things where I didn't run more than a half marathon up until it.
Whoa!
It was just the daily running, like getting out on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And it was well supported, and it's been around for a long time. So a lot of tradition, and a lot of really great talent comes out and participates. So you get to be around. Like Bonnie Bush, for example.
Right.
I mean, you get to spend 4 or 5 hours hanging out talking to her.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from enjoying the running and trying to keep up with her, you're going to learn a lot too.
Yeah.
You know, she's just one example.
All right. Well, good job, and good luck at Zane Grey.
Thank you very much.
All right, and thanks for letting me stay at your place.
Oh, absolutely, Zane. My pleasure.
All right, bye. Okay, there you go. Just a few things to follow up on that. I forgot to mention the shoes I wore. I actually am not positive. Pretty sure I wore my Hoka Speed Goats for that, just to make sure they were still working good, because that's what I was planning to wear in the race a couple weeks later. I had my Injinji socks, my toe socks, and they both worked very well for me. A little bit from the interview, he mentioned Thor's Day in it, a group that runs at 4:30 in the morning. Kind of interesting. This is a group of people who have been running around the lake. They do like the course, but they don't do the little bubble, I think. So they usually just do 12.5 miles, but they do it every Thursday morning, and they call themselves the Thor's Day group, like Thor with the big hammer. They've got shirts and hats, and they go to races all wearing their Thor's Day shirts. Pretty cool. And from what I know, they've run it every Thursday for something like 3 years now, or 4 years. And I mean every one. If it falls Christmas morning, New Year's morning, whatever, they've never missed. At least one person has been there. That's all that counts, as long as one person shows up. And no one has missed, as a group, they've never had a Thursday without someone there for years now. They have a running little thing with how many weeks in a row they've been doing it on their site. But some really, really good runners in that group, but anyone can do it. And like I said, it can be blizzarding. The spillway they've had to swim over the spillway, that type of thing. I don't know if they've ever had to not go over the spillway. I think they'd still count it if they couldn't get over the spillway. But I know at times they've pretty much swum over the spillway. So that's a fun little group. I have run it with them a couple of times. Casey also mentioned the Corn Belt 24-hour run. That's in Davenport, Iowa. Well, I think it's in Eldridge, Iowa, which is a suburb of Davenport, which is about 60 miles from where this race was. And that's just on a track, 400-meter track. And it's every May, and I've been wanting to do it forever. But May is always a good month for doing other big races, so it's never really fit in. But he was talking about that. He mentioned Bonnie Bush. Bonnie Bush is a person from the Quad Cities, which includes Davenport, Iowa. And she's a really cool person, a good friend of mine, and has accomplished a ton, including things like Arrowhead. She's finished Arrowhead 135 and Badwater 135, and has done Ironman triathlons. So that'll give you an idea right there. She's basically a Quad Cities legend. He mentioned the Zane Grey 50-miler race outside of Phoenix, which sounds really cool. I'd love to do that. I think if I saw right, Casey timed out of an aid station right near the end. I think he said he missed a cutoff by 2 minutes. I feel your pain, Casey, because I've twice timed out and one time by 7 minutes. So I know what that's like. But he's got a great attitude. He just posted, yeah, I timed out by 2 minutes at this, I don't know, mile 40 or somewhere around there. But I had a great day, had a great run, had fun. So good attitude. I'm sure it wasn't easy because we had a cool spring here in the Midwest, and then he probably went and it was probably super hot. I should notice more about Casey. He's done some amazing things. So there's this very famous bike ride across Iowa. It takes 7 days. The route's not always the same, but it's between 400 and 500 miles. He ran it once. And this has had coverage all throughout Iowa that he ran the race across Iowa. While they were biking, he was basically running. I don't know if he started earlier, exactly how he did it now. Forget the details. But basically, when you bike it, you do like 60 to 100 miles per day. You bike it. All right? So there you bike, and then you get done, and you can hang out. But he's trying to run this whole darn thing, which is amazing. He's also a volunteer firefighter. And one time he did 24 hours of running in his firefighting gear. Just did it on his own. He just ran 24 hours straight in honor of his father who died of cancer. And I believe right at the end of the race, he timed it. So he finished at like 9 a.m. and there was a 5K at 9 a.m. Then he ran the 5K. So just to put a little exclamation point on that. He's done his own little 100-mile races in his neighborhood all on its own, or in Iowa City. He just plans out a 100-mile route and does it on its own, which is, I don't know how people do that exactly. I kind of like the idea and I want to do it, but man, that sounds tough to just solo on your own run 100 miles. Anyway, so he's done some stuff like this. So he's a pretty darn cool guy to take on some of these big challenges like this. I should mention the Hawkeye 50K. So I'll finish by saying you need to do it. It's a very cool race. If you're anywhere in the Midwest, come do it. It's a great training race. It's a great race to open up your legs if you want to get moving faster and not have to worry about constantly looking down for rocks and roots. Great race. Great way to get yourself into the trail running scene. If that's not what you've done, you're not going to have so much that it's going to kill you. You're going to have some road and crushed gravel. Really nice. And I will also notice the Hawkeye 50K is now adding a Hawkeye 50K for the fall. So we'll have a fall version and a spring version. And in the fall version, I believe they're going to run the course in the opposite direction. So that's pretty cool. So now you can do the Hawkeye 50K in the fall or the spring. I'll try to put links to all this stuff up. I'm sure you can just Google Hawkeye 50K, but they're going to have a fall and a spring version. So maybe if you want, I think it's going to be this October, will be the first fall version. I think they might be calling it like the Hawkeye Fallout 50K or something like that. So get on that. Do that. All right, let's get to the second race. The Backside Trail Marathon was the one I did in Kentucky. Backside Trail Marathon. So this was only a marathon in Louisville, Kentucky, which I know I say that wrong for you people there. I cannot say it correctly. And this was another training race for me for the race I was going to do 2 weeks after this. So the Backside Trail Marathon, I did 2 weeks after the Hawkeye 50K. So it was on a Sunday, April 29th. It was actually 15 days after the Hawkeye 50K. I did the Backside Trail Marathon. I don't know why they call it Backside. Hawkeye 50K is obvious. It's named after the University of Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm not sure where the Backside Trail comes from. Maybe that's the name of one of the trails. So this was going to be 2 weeks before my big race, which I'll talk about in the next episode. Like I said, it's a trail marathon. I was in Louisville, and Seneca Park, I think, is the name of the park. It looks like it has a big golf course there and some other things there, but they also have some trails. But I think you're running in kind of two different park systems. I think you run across, you're in one park and then you run through a golf course into another park, something like this. The packet pickup was at a place called Quest Outdoors. I never heard of it, but maybe it's only in Louisville. I don't know. It's like a big sporting goods store, a big outdoor store. Okay, Quest Outdoors. And that's where the packet pickup was the day before. And I got myself a shirt. It's a cotton T-shirt. It says Backside Trail. Something's got a big horse on it because the day before this was the Kentucky Derby. So that's why they did it on Sunday, I assume, because the Kentucky Derby was on Saturday. And as you'll find out, a bunch of people did both. I meant Kentucky Derby Marathon. And actually, if you did both, the Backside Trail Marathon gave those people a special award for doing both, which is pretty cool. So I got the shirt at the packet pickup. Oh, I also got my bib, even though it's only a road ID bib. It's number 31. I've never gotten number 31, and I know it's stupid, but I've always said 31 was my favorite number. You know, we all have a favorite number, which is dumb. 31 is my favorite number. I think it's the first time I ever got it. So there you go. I'll have to save that, even though it's not a fancy bib. I spent the night. Louisville's only a couple hours away, like 2.5, but I thought it's just far enough that I didn't feel like getting up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning to drive to the race. All right, so I thought I'll just get a really cheap hotel. And I did get a very cheap hotel. I spent like $45 total for this hotel. And just for fun, I'll mention, I'm not even going to say the name of this hotel, okay? Just to be nice, I'm going to not say the name, but it's an off-brand hotel that I never heard of. And I looked at some of the reviews, and I'm just going to read you some of the reviews for this hotel. The worst motel I've ever encountered. My boyfriend and I booked a room for the 4th of May, but decided that the 5th would be better. I don't know what that has to do with anything. We arrived and went to our room only to find that the bed wasn't made, nor was the room cleaned. They offered to place us in another room, but I wasn't willing to take it because I had already seen enough of the filth. The police were called on me because I refused to leave until they gave me the name of the owner or a refund. This place needs to be demolished. The staff is very unprofessional. I can understand why they hired the trashy staff with this trashy motel. They both go hand in hand. Here's another review. Sleeping in the car would have been better. In the bathroom, the toilet paper roll was empty. If the staff doesn't even change the toilet paper rolls, what else aren't they doing? There was hair on the pillows, so obviously the sheets hadn't been washed. Overall, the room was gross. At check-in, the clerk first said she had canceled my reservation, but then she did manage to get me a room. I tried to use the ice machine, but it only produced about 10 ice cubes. Also, it had a big sign saying that guests may not use it to fill coolers. Here's another one. This place needs to be condemned. I can't believe the health department still allows it to be open. When you are there, you start to think of all the things you have done. Okay, when you are there, you start to sorry. Start over. When you are there, you start to think of all the things you have done wrong in your life to end up in a place like this. The staff are crooked. The place is a dump. It's a scam. The saddest thing the saddest of the saddest people on earth are milling around here. The heating cooling systems don't work. The rooms all smell horrible, like smoke and vomit covered up with horrid bathroom spray. It's just plain depression. They wrote depression. Just plain depressing. I would stay somewhere else. It isn't worth it. It's not safe and it's dangerous too. Don't put your life and health at risk. Don't get ripped off and taken advantage of by staying in this abomination. So that's where I stayed. To be fair, I have a gut feeling that since these were written, there's been some updates to the hotel. Yeah, my room wasn't very nice. It honestly wasn't. But it might be, and the staff is super, super friendly. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the Hawkeye 50K. I forgot something. The medal. I got a really cool medal. It's pretty big, and it's got like a claw on it. It's really neat. I'll put a picture of the medal. Okay, silver medal. It says Hawkeye 25K, 50K. It's got this claw, and it's the shape of the medal. At the part of it is the shape of a claw. So sorry about that. Very cool medal you get for the Hawkeye 50K when you finish. Okay, let's get back to the Backside Trail Marathon, which I did. So this course also was a 2-looper. It was a 13.1 mile loop. And I forget when we started. I should have looked. Maybe 8 a.m. or something. No later than 8, I'm sure. It could have been 7. Because if it was much later than that, I would have just driven down. So I think. You could leave a drop bag at the start finish. By the way, you could at the Hawkeye 50K as well. Of course, since you went by it, you could leave a drop bag there, which I did. Same thing here. You can leave a drop bag at the start finish. Actually, a Hawkeye 50K, I left my drop bag in the car. You go right by your car. So I just left it in there. Here I just put it I left it in my car here too. In both cases, because we went by my car as well here. So in both these cases, I just left my drop bag in the car, in the trunk. I had a key, so I just opened up the trunk or whatever. In both these cases. So you can have drop bag at these two races at the start finish, because they're both two loopers if you're doing the longer distance. They did have a half marathon at the Backside Trail Marathon as well, as I think they did. Okay, so let's describe this course. It's more complex than the Hawkeye 50K. So you start right next to a road, a park road, and you don't run over the road, but you do this kind of little U-shaped loop of sorts, kind of S-shaped, and you go up this hill and back down. I think it's part of a cross-country course. Then you run along the road for only like 100 yards or 50 yards over like a little bridge, and then you're still on the same side of the road and you run through a bunch of trails. So this is like 3.5 miles total, and you're back to the start finish. All right, so there's a little U-shaped grassy part along the road for a tiny bit, a bunch of single track, and it's kind of up and down. Some's rocky, a little bit of rocky here and there, rooty, and then you make your way right back to the start finish. You've done about 3.5 miles. From then, you cross the park road, and you're going to do basically a lollipop that has about a 2-mile stem and then about a 6-mile loop. All right, and then you're going to come back, roughly, and that's going to be your 13.1 miles. The first part of the lollipop, the stem, you're actually running right alongside a golf course. I mean, right on the edge. You could just take 2 steps to the left and you'd be on the fairway. That's what I mean by right on the edge. In fact, I was running by some people teeing off, I don't know which hole, so I'm trying to run quietly, like my bottles are sloshing, and I'm trying to run quiet. And I go down like 100 yards, and all of a sudden I hear something whizzing through the trees above me. So the guy sliced his shot and luckily did not bean me in the noggin, but I didn't see where his ball landed, but I heard it above me. Hope he didn't blame me for it. So you run around on the golf course for a while, then you hit a spot where you're going to do the bigger loop, like a 6-mile loop or something like that. And this part is mostly kind of single track. You've got also mountain bike trails, if you know what those are like. The single track is pretty darn rooty. Lots of ruts. It's really hard for me to get a rhythm. And not a whole lot of up and down, but just little bits of up and down here and there. And very rooty. Some spots were very rocky. I never really got a great running rhythm going. It was really kind of can beat up your ankles. So for good technical runners, not a problem. I'm not a good technical runner. So I never really got a good rhythm going. There is a little part where I don't know what we were in. Maybe a park. So you're in kind of a park road for a little bit. One part you're running along a lake. It was super rocky. I just walked it because it was so big boulder type rocks. I just walked through that. Just generally nice running though. Through the woods, single track, enjoyable running. You came back at the end of that loop. You ran kind of on a road for a little bit, for like a half mile-ish or something, and then you kind of got back to the stem. So that's kind of how that loop works. So it's very nice running. Again, it was enjoyable. It's not anything super epic, but it was a very nice race, for great training race for something longer, or if you want to challenge yourself with a good trail marathon and you really want to kind of work on your technical running, because I had plenty of rock, especially roots, lots of roots and rocks. Let's see. I did the first lap in about 2 hours and 28 minutes. And the second lap in about 2 hours and 41 minutes. I should note, on the second lap of that first part, before we crossed over the road, we kind of did that little 3.5 mile section, and you come back to the start finish. Okay, the whole day, the whole course was dry, completely dry. I'm really almost not used to running on such dry courses because I run a lot of trails in the winter. Completely dry, except for a couple of little spots that were wet. It was just kind of like a little trickle of water going over the trail. I mean, there were literally maybe 3 of these on the whole course, and it might be like 3 yards of it. Somehow, I fell in one of those. And it wasn't even the water itself. It wasn't like it was slick. I just happened to fall and land in this trickle of water. I mean, it was a 1/4 inch deep. It was nothing. Yet I just somehow magically hit it correctly, such that both hands were absolutely coated in mud. I mean, if you look down, you wouldn't even see mud, but yet both hands are completely caked in mud. One of my water bottles, the nipple, completely caked in mud. I even hit my face. I fell so hard. It was one of these things where I stumbled and tried to catch myself and did not catch myself. And before I blinked my eye, my head already hit. It was like that fast. And I had mud on the side of my face, mud all over my arms. My hands were caked in mud. My legs, everything. It was muddy. And it's hilarious. It looked like it was a muddy race. It was like this 3 yards of quarter-inch wetness that I managed to hit. So it was like completely ludicrous that I could have landed right there. But I did. And on top of that, I gashed the crap out of my finger. I forget which now what it was. It's my left hand. The tip of my finger, I'll put a picture of it if you want to be grossed out, but the tip of my middle finger and my left hand, huge gash. It was not a deep gash, okay, but I couldn't really tell that because it's covered in mud, but it was bleeding all over the dang place. I had also blood on my leg. I cut my knee, had blood on my leg. So it looked like I had this huge epic fall, even though it was this little stumble onto nothing. But, where I hit was rock and mud and this little wetness. I also hit my watch really hard. I thought I broke my watch face because I hit the watch face so hard, but it was fine. So tough watch. Suto Ambit 3 Peak. Did well. Anyway, then luckily I was only about a mile back to the start finish. So I went into there, used the water to clean my hands off in the bottle, and I could see my hand didn't look like it was going to be that bad. So I just kept running, and the blood dried up and it didn't keep bleeding. So it kind of looked worse than it really was. But anyway, that was kind of silly. Anyway, that slowed me down for the second lap. The first lap I said was like 2:27, and the second lap 2:41. So part of it was cleaning myself up there. And also in the second lap, I took my camera and started taking some pictures. So, because I like to take pictures of the races I do if I can. So that slowed me down a little bit. Actually, I'm pretty happy the second lap was only 14 minutes slower, even though I was probably lost 4 or 5 minutes cleaning myself up and then stopped and was taking pictures. So my total time was 5:09:08, which is 12:01, a pace of 12:01 minutes per mile, which is actually slower than I did the Hawkeye 50K, which doesn't make sense to me. The Hawkeye 50K was more hilly and had all that wind we had to run into. So the only thing I can think of is all the rocks and roots. This course was pretty flat, this marathon, pretty darn flat. So it must have been all the rocks and roots. Like I said, I just couldn't ever open up my legs because it doesn't make sense to me. I wanted a slower pace. Plus, this course is shorter, so you think I could speed up a little, but I didn't. I was 15th of 28 overall finishers. By the way, how many people did Hawkeye? 150? I don't know, total 150, 200, maybe more than 200 between the 50K and 25K. I'm sorry, I don't know. This one, again, I don't know. 100, 150 again, something like that. So for the marathon, I guess only 28 did the marathon. It seems like there's more than that. 15th of 28 in the marathon overall, 11th of 17 males. So bad part. And I felt like I was running pretty well, actually, but I guess I wasn't running that fast. Some fast folks there. The winner was 47-year-old Will Rivera. And I believe you'll hear in a conversation I'm talking to him. I have some audio, and he told me his name was Will Rivera, and then I said, "Oh, Will Riviera?" I wonder if he gets that all the time. But anyway, it's Will Rivera, I believe, of Elizabethtown, Kentucky, 3:29:39. It says 47 years old, but he looks about 35. Turns out he's a fantastic runner, by the way, which you'll find out. Second place was Jeff Hoffman, and third place was Josh Elliott. Both of those were from Louisville. So like I said, Will Rivera, 3:29:39. That's cooking. In the women, it was 35-year-old Laura Stewart of Owenton, Kentucky, 4:18:15. Second place, Kelly Ball of Asheville, North Carolina. And third place was Catherine Zampelin of Richmond, Virginia. So both those two came from quite a distance. In the half, the winner was 31-year-old Zach Taylor of Louisville, Kentucky, 133.50. That's really good. And the female was 33-year-old Tracy Green of Louisville, also 143.15. That's pretty good. My watch said we had about 2,200 feet of up and down, although Troy, the race director, Troy Shellhammer, said he got about 2,940. So 2,200, 2,940, somewhere in there, I guess, is the up and down for this. Remember, Hawkeye 50K was like 2,900, so. But it's a little bit longer. Anyway, the weather was incredible. I mean, it's rare that the weather is so darn good. It was like in the 40s when we started. Probably finished, it was like in the 50s. Right afterwards, like in the 60s. It was sunny. It was beautiful. Low humidity. You couldn't ask for better weather. I mean, it seems so rare that you're running such a perfect day. Where afterwards you just sit out in the grass because it's so nice. Right under the sun. I mean, how often does that seem to happen? Not very often. So perfect weather. 8 stations about every 3 to 5 miles, roughly. There's plenty of them, whatever it was. There was plenty of them. They had the typical fare. Again, I can't remember what it was. They had sport drink and water and other stuff you needed. Again, I'm sorry, I don't exactly remember, but it had everything you needed. The course marking were ribbons. And the turns are really well marked. I could have used more confidence ribbons. There were a few times I'm running along. I'm like, I hope I'm on the right trail. And then if I kept running, eventually I'd see another ribbon. So a few times I got nervous. There's a couple of turns I almost missed, but I guess it really would have been my fault. Kind of like I remember one where you're running and then the turn is like down to the left, but the trail you're on kind of seems to go more up and a little straight or to the right. That would have been an easy one to miss, but I just kind of at the last second, I caught corner of my eye that, ribbons to the left. So, but the thing is, if you took a wrong turn, you might not know it for a while because there weren't constant confidence ribbons. They might go a half mile, which is quite a ways, right? So if you're running on the wrong trail, how would you know how far to go? You're going to go at least a half mile and you're still wondering. Then you go another half mile. So, But anyway, I never once got lost. So having said that, they must have marked it pretty darn good because I get lost pretty easily. And I never got lost. So good job marking it. We got a cool medal for this when we finished. I will post pictures of all these, by the way, on the website. Everything I'm talking about, there'll be pictures of it on the website, runsmith.net. It's a little horseshoe. Totally cool because it's Kentucky Derby weekend. And it says backside trail, 13.1, 24/2, a little stamped in little thing on the horseshoe. So a little orange horseshoe. Dig that. That was fun. And then everyone who finished, I don't know if it was just the marathon or everybody, there was a table full of goodies, just like kind of like a raffle, but we didn't have to pay anything except pay to get in the race, which, by the way, I don't remember what the cost was, but it wasn't a lot of money. I think it was fairly cheap. So when I got there, there wasn't a whole lot left because I'm pretty slow. But I did pick up something pretty nice. It's called a ultralight waterproof dry sack from Osprey. So here's the box for it, and here's the bag right next to it. And it's one of these bags. It looks like it's like 5 liters or something. You can put stuff in it. So I think I could use this for a drop bag. I didn't use it yet because the race I did after this wasn't going to be wet or anything. But this is waterproof, so you can put stuff in it and kind of fold it down, and it locks closed. And I think this would be really nice. I don't know why no one took this. I was kind of really happy to get it. So either there was really cool stuff, even cooler than this on the table before I got there, or I don't know what people were thinking. They just didn't think it was cool, but I'm really happy to get that because I don't have one of those. That's a nice dry bag. What else? That's about it for the race itself. Again, kind of quick in the sense that I don't have a whole lot to say. Both these races, you don't need to spend forever talking about, how it went because they're both relatively easy races. Again, this would be another great starter race for if you want to get into trail races. Do the half or do the full. If you're thinking about doing an ultra, do the trail marathon here because then you're pretty darn close to doing an ultra. So another fantastic race put on by great Troy Shellhammer. Seemed like a great guy. At the start of the race, he gave a little talk. He's a coach as well, which you'll hear in a moment. Sounds like someone who'd be worth hiring. Beautiful day, although it sounds like we were lucky with the beautiful day business. Let's see. So at the end, I pulled out my recorder, and I was going to try to interview Cynthia Hetty. Now, everyone in probably where I am near Cincinnati, all through Kentucky, and even farther, know who she is. She's an amazing, accomplished runner. For example, she's done Western States. I believe she's done Leadville. She's done UTMB, which she just did last year. She's an amazing runner, and she's a race director herself. Her husband actually was did the timing for this race, Todd. So they put on a bunch of races as well, including Louisville, Loving the Hills. I believe she puts that on, which everyone should do someday. It's in Kentucky. We talk about that. Anyway, I went over to interview her, but she was sitting in a group, and I just, instead of really interviewing, I just turned my recorder on. And I told them, I'm just going to record what we're saying. And I just turned it on. So I ended up talking to her, also to Will Rivera, the winner. Talked to him. Also a guy named John Wright from the Louisville-ish area. I talked to him. He did the marathon. And the race director, Troy, came over as well. So you hear me just kind of talking to these people. So it's just a little example of kind of after the race chat. I should notice I did some editing, and it's not always smooth. So I took out a lot of stuff, and trust me, you're happy I took it out. So because it's just boring, all right, or silly, but it'll make it choppy. At some places, it just kind of chops off to something else, but it's okay. You might hear a few places where there's two conversations going at once, so you have to deal with that. But anyway, it's just kind of like typical after race chit chat. And right when I turned the recorder on, we were talking to Will, who had run Boston Marathon, which was, I guess, 2 weeks before this. Then he had done the Kentucky Marathon yesterday, or the day before this, and then this race. So 3 marathons in less than 2 weeks, because Boston's on Monday. So 2 Saturdays later, he did Kentucky Derby, and then Sunday, he does Backside Trail Marathon. So he did a lot of races. So the first thing he talks about doing a 2:52, he ran 2:52 at Boston. So that gives you an idea how fast that guy is. And I think he was saying that was actually his PR, which is pretty good. So that's kind of how the conversation starts. Let's go ahead and listen to that right now.
Yeah, I ran a 2:52.
Oh my gosh, Will!
Yeah, it was like...
Is that your PR?
That's my PR, believe it or not.
How did you feel yesterday after just doing Boston?
You know, amazingly good. I mean, I guess I'm getting used to the long
Did you
I'm
get
signed up for Lake Tahoe.
Oh, yeah.
But I got picked up for Spartathlon again this year, and I'm running for Team USA.
You did the 50, she did the 50.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's an amazing team this year. We have Dean Karnazes is in there. You know the fruitarian, Michael Einstein?
I know what you're talking about. He does hurt.
He does hurt. That guy's a beast.
He eats all like bananas all day long or something.
Really? Oh, yeah, I know the
So I'm
fruitarian.
running with him
Yeah.
this year.
I've listened to his podcast, The Fruitarian.
He's got a
He
podcast?
actually won, well, he did a bunch of
Have you heard
videos.
of Spartathlon? The
Uh-huh.
Spartathlon? Have you heard of it?
Yeah, and one in Greece.
Yeah.
153 miles.
Is that what you all are doing?
So I did it last year,
Holy crap.
and I'm Team USA this year. So I'm in like
Dude, what's your name?
Will
Will what?
Rivera.
Riviera?
Yeah.
Will Riviera's a really fast guy.
Rivera.
Spartathlon. Spartathlon looks really hard because you have to keep up a serious pace, right?
Is it
It's
on
not
the
like-
road? Is
it's
that
not
the
like you
road?
just
Is
get
that
a
the road?
60-hour
Did you go
limit or
with
something.
last year?
Beautiful course. Yeah.
Are you going back?
What makes it tough is the early
You were
cutoffs.
so wow.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Got to make to the 50 mile in less than 9 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's the most brutal part of the race because you go through Athens City, it's a lot of pollution, the traffic is hot. It's just super, tough, and then once you make it there, most people, what I'm saying, if they're...
Here comes a runner.
Good job, good job, good job! Woo!
It takes so much away from you, what I'm saying, just
Yeah.
to make it to that cutoff, and then you still got another 100 miles,
Oh
Does
my
the
gosh.
pace does the pace stay the same for the cutoffs, or does it actually get slower?
They get easier,
But you've got all those miles in your
you
legs.
got all those miles, and obviously your body's going to...
It's all concrete too, right?
And it's all pavement.
Ouch.
at mile 100, there's a huge mountain you got to climb.
Yeah, I heard that.
trails, gnarly, you know. So it's challenging.
Don't you have to eat like figs? The whole No, I'm just joking. That's what Carnazes did, right?
Yeah, he did it.
He ate
Yeah.
like some weird ancient.
Yeah, he paid the price.
Yeah, I know. It didn't sound very good.
Yeah. But I get to meet him this year. He's part of Team USA.
Wow.
He's running, yeah.
So what race are you doing for that? That's Spartathlon? Spartathlon isn't some type of race that has a team element, does it? I mean, I'm confused.
So each country's allotted so many runners.
I didn't know that.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So Team USA, we have 25 runners.
I mean, is there a team competition at Spartathlon?
So when every year, I'm saying they try to, each country has, you know, and they kind of like recognize you for the most finishers for each country.
Right.
The fastest time.
So can you go?
Japan always kicks ass.
I mean, are there actual team points like the
No.
100K championship?
No,
Oh,
not
so it's more
really,
informal.
You know, but it's good because they do a gala, you know what I'm saying, like 2 days later, so they do the awards. And yeah, it's cool, you know what I'm saying, the teams get together and, you know, everybody goes up front and gets recognized.
Who else is on your team?
So Bob Hearns,
Oh, yeah,
he's
I
an
heard of him.
amazing runner.
Isn't he like 60 or something? Or am
Yeah,
I
he's a big 24-hour guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He runs like 150 mile,
Yeah.
24-hour, yeah. Bob Hearns, Dean Karnazes, Michael Einstein. There's Olaf. You know Olaf from Tennessee? Young guy. He ran a 15-hour 100-miler at Tunnel Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Olaf, yeah, he's doing it.
Are there any
Jack
women on your
Al.
team?
Yeah, so the defending champ, she's coming back.
Is that
She's an
Nagy?
American.
Nagy. Nagy. Kathleen?
Yeah, I think she's Polish, but she's an American runner.
Yeah. She's good. We've had some other women do well there. Like, we've had a couple women win that. She won it and someone else did.
Let me see who won. I don't think Ann Trees. No, Ann they never did that one. But one of the two things. Scott Ure has been our best runner ever.
It's been a while, though.
He won like 2 back-to-back years.
Scott Jurek yet?
Yeah. I don't know how he did it. He was such an amazing, talented runner. Because he'll run trails, then he'll go to Badwater.
Yeah.
He won
kill
Badwater,
it.
too.
He won Badwater 2
Yeah.
years. But the years that he won Badwater, he went to Spartathlon, Greece, and won those years, too.
Well, that's like
Wow.
the people who Ann Trace and Comrades and then Western States.
Yeah.
But
that's
you're
ridiculous.
the same way, Will. I mean,
Yeah, look at Will. He does Boston and 252 and then
I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, she knows me. I do a lot of gnarly stuff, trails, but I hate trails. I do better in roads. I ran all that, and I'll tell you, I love it.
it's funny.
I don't
I
have
was
to
just
worry about
telling.
what's coming up in the ground. I don't have to worry about tripping.
Yeah.
I just run.
Yeah.
It hurts more, but I don't have to worry about the elements of
I was
tripping
just
over a
telling
rock.
those people over there, I'm a horrible trail runner. Type
Oh,
stuff.
you're awesome, man.
maybe it's the atmosphere that you like.
Yeah, I
so
like the
much more.
atmosphere and
Congratulations. 4th.
Good
yeah,
job.
I did all right. Not 5 hours.
Now that's a fun race right there, Javelina.
I didn't run so great.
Oh, yeah.
You ran yesterday. I saw you yesterday. Did you do the
there's
marathon?
overachievers around here.
Yeah, this is my best time on this by an hour. So
Oh,
it
that's
helps to lose
awesome.
25 pounds in the key bar.
It does have to lose. I have actually, I guess it does.
What year
You
was
did
that?
great.
Cynthia, are you training for anything? You had a big year the last couple years, right?
Yes, I signed up. Well, I'm not haven't started training yet. I got to make a
UTMB
plan.
last year. What's for this
I'm
year?
actually going to do Wasatch.
Wasatch.
I
That
signed up.
sounds
I
tough.
got in Wasatch. I want to do Moab, but
The 240 or the?
the 240.
Oh.
But I don't think I can afford it really. I may have
Is it
to
really
wait
pricey?
another year.
I imagine it is.
Yeah,
never thought
well,
about
if
that.
I don't know if I can go to Utah 2 months in a row. Like,
Yeah.
what I did was I wanted to do Moab, so I put my name into Wasatch, thinking that if I got into that 100-mile, because they're both in Utah, I could use it as a training.
Uh-huh.
Well, I got in,
about a
and
mile
so
or so
I think I will.
Good job, man.
I think I will. So I'm going to go. My dream is I wrote the race director.
Candace, is that Candace?
Yeah, Candace. And I still would like to do Moab, but I may have to wait till another year.
Have you done anything over 100 miles yet? Have you-
Well, UTMB is 105.
105.
Which is nothing. I mean, 5 miles.
Fine, yeah.
I've gotten lost before in 100.
There you go.
And done a few
Those
extra
count.
miles. Yeah, that counts. But no, I haven't.
Well-
I'd like to.
What do you have coming up? Anything interesting?
Greece?
Oh, Spartathlon, yeah.
Greece is
That's
gonna
July,
be my
right?
big race this year because I want to do well in their Team USA.
Yeah.
But I do have Warhammer in June. It's a new 100 miler.
Yeah, it's in Kentucky also, right?
That's in Kentucky.
South.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
The race director, she just told me, I'm saying they're a great guy, Brand.
Is that Gage's? Brian Gage? Or is it
No, Brian.
I'm thinking of this guy,
Brian
Yamacraw
does,
guy.
Yeah, Yamacraw. I did Yamacraw.
Yeah.
Yeah. This guy does the rough trail and trail.
Am I crazy? I've been in Ohio for 4 years, been living there. Has Kentucky just exploded with ultras in the last few years, or
It
not?
has. On
It
the
seems
Daniel
like
Boone
it
National
has.
Forest, it
Right, in
has.
the Daniel Boone area. All of a sudden, there's all these like epic races, like Yamacraw and like 6 others.
Yeah.
Seems like they just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's a beautiful,
Well,
beautiful
they're all
area.
on the
Most
same
definitely.
trail.
Cloud Spitter?
There's that no business.
Splitters.
Cloud Splitter left Kentucky. Did you know
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I saw
They're
that,
in Virginia. It was up in Pine Mountain, but they've moved across the border.
Yeah. There's another one called No Business.
No business,
the No
right?
Business
That might be
runner.
this guy.
That's Brian.
Because I think it's on the same
It's
course as
Michael
Yamacraw. It's similar
Weissman. Michael
course.
Weissman puts on the Warhammer.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be the first year for that.
Right.
So
But then there's this big turtle they just had.
Big Turtle is Michael Weissman.
Okay, so we got a couple of guys putting on some
Most definitely.
newer
Yeah.
races.
Love in the Hills is still the best.
I did that a few years ago. I need to go back and do that. I actually think I did really well the year I did it, because it was quite a while ago, and I was younger, and I feel like I did well. But I need to go back. It's a
Yeah.
great training race if you're training for something longer.
It's gnarly, it's
It
tough.
is.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the toughest runners now that've been around,
Yeah.
every time I go back in their history, for some reason they done Loving the Hills. I mean, it's crazy, you know.
And if I remember, isn't part of it an out and back? Well, which I like, because then I
when
always
you,
like
it's
out
like
and
a
back.
lollipop. When you go
Okay.
down Siltstone and then
okay.
you do Scott's Gap and then you come
I
back.
like
yeah.
out and backs and lollipops because then you get to see the front runners like
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
It's just
I like
fun.
that too.
I mean, maybe not the whole race, but like lollipops and stuff like that, part of it. It's always fun to see people again.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of nice.
Yeah. It is fun to see them. It is. There have been a lot of really good runners that have done Love in the
that
Hills.
kid Avery Collins. he
Avery
just won.
Collins.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He did Loving the
You know, he was just out of high school, and so did Scott Breeden. When he came when he was
Yeah.
in high school and did it for 4 years, so he finally won. And Eric Grossman,
Oh, wow.
you know,
Yeah.
back in the day, Russ Goodman was a really great runner. Russ did it again this year, but Russ is like me; he's getting older, I guess.
Been doing it.
And,
Has he ever won it? In the back of the-
No, but he keeps coming the top. You know, he always did really, really well. And
Another good runner's doing it a few times from him. Harvey Lewis.
yeah, Harvey Lewis.
Harvey
Oh, wow,
Lewis
yeah.
from Cincinnati.
Huh.
Very accomplished. He's won Badwater.
How many years has Louisville 11 Hills been going? Quite a while, right? At least
15,
10?
16.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So is the weather always this good for this race?
No.
Pretty darn perfect. It was like
This is the
started
sixth year
about
for this
40 and then
race.
went up to 50 during the race or something. I
Yeah.
mean, and now it's like 60 or something. Gosh,
Yeah.
it's like you dialed in the most amazing. Is your husband timing this?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
That's
what I thought.
Todd. Yeah, you know what? I should help him, but I always run it, so he's left to his own advice. He has to do it by himself.
Is the race director around right now?
Troy?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Is that
He's
him?
Right there.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I always get my picture taken with the race director.
Troy's a great runner too. I mean, he's won a lot of things.
Oh, really?
Sandra runner.
I heard him. Yeah, I heard him say he
Troy's
coaches.
an amazing runner.
Yeah, he's a good coach.
Ah,
Coach, runner, and race director.
very nice.
The whole package.
So what's your name here?
I'm John.
John White.
John Wright.
And you did Tunnel Hill, you said.
Yeah, and I did the Derby yesterday, and of course this one.
Oh, man, another overachiever.
Yeah.
I'm feeling weak
Yeah,
now.
but guess what? He's doing Vol State this year.
I ran 2 miles yesterday. Vol State?
That's the goal. That's the goal this year.
Holy guacamole.
Yep.
I just don't, I
Just
think
10
How
days
many
of pure
miles is
torture.
that?
314
Number
or
314. High.
There you go.
Perfect number.
I just don't think I can handle that much concrete. I just think I'd break down. I don't know.
got like real windy.
So what do you do? You just sleep wherever you want to along the way?
Yes, there's several hotels that you can check in and out of depending on where you're at on the course. There's people. It's become such a big thing now that people open their homes to you to come in and eat and stuff like that. So it's just you're just out. It's just you and the road. 10 days, you got to finish it. You know, you and the road. It's just pure will.
I mean, there's part of me that wants to do it, but I could see me after 150 miles just crying,
Oh, you're going to
lying
cry.
on the side of the road,
That's
in
part
fetal
of it.
position.
That's part of it.
Do people team
the highs
up
and
and go
lows.
together?
I think
people
you
team up and go
can.
together?
I mean, yeah,
Well, I imagine some
officially.
do.
Then they have the screwed and uncrewed. Which one are you doing? The crude
The
or
screwed, traditional style, of course.
Did you do the marathon today?
Yes.
How'd it go?
25 minutes off last year's time.
Ah, very nice.
They're really, really happy with time. Course conditions are a lot better this year than the past two.
Yeah, it was pretty perfect. This buckle is pretty awesome. You get a
Took a spill, man?
what?
Fall?
Oh yeah. So there was, this was bone dry except for a couple of plate-sized spots of mud. That's where I fell. I mean, I hit my face on it. I hit my body. My bottle was full of mud. Gashed my hands. I don't know. I mean, I'm such a klutz.
So is anybody going with you to Ball State?
No. I'm just going to drive down there, ride the bus from the Rock back to...
Now, I think Jim Ball's doing it. You know Jim Ball? He lives here in town.
He's done it a few times, right? Jim Ball?
Yeah. Now, I would assume you'd be a lot faster than Jim, so you probably...
Yeah, my goal is 6 days.
There's a guy named Sal that's done it 1,000 times, and Sal is a really good runner. And so maybe you could run with him some. I know that I met him at a Pinhoti years ago. This is great. So I'm running Pinhoti, and my friend Kim is running with me, and my headlamp goes out, and because she's running with me at night, and she somehow takes her hat off. Her headlamp falls off.
Uh-oh.
And we are up here on a trail, and the trail's, we don't know that we're not even on the trail. The trail's down here, but we can't see anything. We're like, oh my God. And we're looking, we're like, where's the headlamp? Well, this guy Sal comes up behind us, and Sal's like, I am dead. I cannot go any further. And I know he has the brightest light I've ever seen. And I just met him. I said, I tell you what, we'll get you to the finish line if you will lead the way.
Light the way.
Light the way with that headlamp. He had gone to Home Depot, and he bought a miner's light, and it lit up the whole forest, and he had it on top of his head.
Looked like a train coming.
And so, by gosh, he did it, and we all just went on our way, and he finished. And so I never saw him again until years later. I was at Land Between the Lakes, and I was with the same girl, Kim, and we're going into this hotel, and this guy's going in. I said, Kim, I think that's that guy that we met. And Sal, and sure enough it was. And he went to dinner with us that night, and he told me then that Val State was the race he did every year. But he was such a nice guy. It was just funny. It was funny. It's a small world, the ultra community.
You see a lot of the same faces year after year. I had some people come up to me today, that I remember me from previous years.
Yeah.
Are you from here?
South of here, just close by.
What, are you from here?
Yep. 45 minutes from here, an hour. Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
I've heard of that. Do you live in Louisville?
No,
I say that wrong, don't I?
Yeah, it's Louisville.
I can't do it. It's like only people from here can actually pull that off.
Louisville. Oh, here's Troy.
Is Troy the
was
race
awesome.
director right
yes,
here?
this is the race director. He wanted to meet you,
I
Troy.
had a fun. I always get my picture taken with the race director. So see if you're
Yeah.
around. Plus, I'm recording for my podcast.
Oh, cool.
A little podcast that no one listens to. There's 3 or 4 listeners.
Well, I'll sign up now.
These 3 people were saying good things about you, Troy. They said you're actually a good runner, good
Great
coach, good guy, family man. No, they didn't say family man, but you probably are a family
His
man.
2 kids have been in the box over there all day.
Oh yeah, I saw a little girl right in the box earlier.
Yeah. That's so funny. I put some Holy City beer in the cooler. Yeah.
So how'd you dial in such perfect weather for this? Is it always like this?
Paid the dues over the last 6 years.
Yeah.
A lot of crappy weather, so
Yeah, a lot of rain.
Well, I'm glad I was actually I'm training for a race in a couple of weeks. I'm worried it's going to be kind of hot, and we've had such a cool spring. I'm not heat acclimated.
Which race?
Yet then U-Rock.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit, and so I was kind of hoping to be hot today, and yet it was cool again.
Yeah.
We had a little dip in the weather.
You've done U-Rock.
Yeah, you did that? The one last year? I mean, did you do it? Because I know it moves around.
I didn't do it last year. I did it the first 2 years.
And it was in this area. Was it in the same spot
So
it is now?
at its inception, it was in Virginia.
Right.
And it was the first major prize purse race in the country. And so the first 2 years, they had really compiled a field that had never been touched before. Like, nothing like it ever. I mean, it was like 30 of the premier ultra runners in the world all compiled on one course in one day. And they were all duking it out for like 25 grand.
Oh my gosh,
so,
fun.
Jeff Rose and Mike Wardian, it was 2011 and 12. And they had prize purses going up to the top 5 spots. And
did you do well?
Eric and I were fighting for that 5th spot. And I passed him on the final climb and slapped him on his butt.
Nah, did you get it?
Realized that there was a guy that was actually ahead of us. We didn't even know it. Jonathan Basham, who just set the Vermont Trail speed record. And so I was 6th, but that was still like...
Yeah, that's a big deal.
I was thrilled with that, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's a big deal. Wow.
But it was awesome, just because...
It doesn't look bad. I mean,
passing Eric on the final climb was worth it to me, just because he was just so mad. And I just slapped him on the butt and gave him a big grin.
That is so funny. That is so funny. You and Eric have always duped it out.
Our relationship blossomed after that.
Okay, there you go. Thanks to all of them. That was an enjoyable little time hang out with them, had a beer. And let's see. So you heard Will Rivera talking about Spartathlon. I thought all of that was interesting. That he was talking about that. That is a race I will never be able to do. Not that I wouldn't try it if it weren't for the cutoffs, but I don't think I'm going to run 50 miles in 9.5 hours, knowing I have 100 more miles to go. Probably not happening, but that would be a cool thing to do. Say anything else about that? I guess I gave it away what my next race after this was, or was going to be, or will be, and that was UROC, which I did do last weekend, but I'm not going to tell you what happened yet. So you'll have to listen to the next episode to hear about that. And I do realize now that the original UROC he's talking about, he says it was set in Virginia, which is where I just did it, but it was in a different spot in Virginia. So maybe I'll go over that a little next time. So UROC moves around. So he didn't do the exact race I did, exact course I did. But anyway, very cool that he was in that race. That's race director Troy we're talking about there. So thank you to Will, Cynthia, John, and Troy for letting me chit-chat with them and hang around with them. That's about it for that race. After the race, I went to Five Guys, the burger place. I got a triple, which is not on the menu, but you can ask for it. Got myself a triple cheeseburger. Very good. So that's it for those 2 races. Again, neither race is the type of race where you're going to say it was absolutely epic. They're not in the mountains or anything like that. They're similar races in that they're beautiful trail races. If you want to kind of get started, you've got shorter versions of them if you like. If you want to, get a relatively fast time in the sense that you don't have to be out for 10 hours or something. You want to run a good distance and be done and be able to have supper and so forth. So they're just great training races or great somewhat beginning trail races or whatever you want to use them for. There they are, and they're both good races. I would absolutely recommend both of them, highly recommend both of them to do. So that's it for that. Let's get on to our general education segment, which I sometimes put in, which has nothing to do with endurance sports whatsoever, but every now and then I come across something and just for fun I throw it in. So for this one, I want you to listen to this. Okay, there you go. I know the sound is not great because I just moved the microphone toward the computer. But I'm thinking all of you recognize the tune. Even if you didn't catch every single word, you all know that song. That is Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith. So let me repeat the lyrics that he said there. That's in the middle of the song. He says, "When I pulled into town in a police car, your daddy said I took it just a little too far. You're telling me things, but your girlfriend lied. You can't catch me 'cause the rabbit done died. So the whole rabbit part, I don't know where I heard this or how this struck my mind, but the whole rabbit part is interesting. What is he talking about? The rabbit done died. What is that business about? So I did some research and I found out what it is. And many of you probably know all about this, but I did not. So here's what I learned. You just go to Wikipedia and you look up the rabbit test. So I'll read it. The rabbit test, or the Friedman test, was an early pregnancy test developed in 1931. By the way, that's the year my dad was born. By Maurice Friedman and Maxwell Lapham. The original test used mice and was based upon the observation that when urine from a woman in the early months of pregnancy is injected into immature female mice, the ovaries of the mice enlarge and show follicular maturation. The test was considered reliable with an error rate of less than 2%. The rabbit test consisted of injecting the tested woman's urine into a female rabbit and a few days later examining the rabbit's ovaries, which would change in response to a hormone secreted only by pregnant women. The hormone, human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG, is produced during pregnancy and indicates the presence of a fertilized egg. It can be found in a pregnant woman's urine and blood. The rabbit test became a widely used bioassay to test for pregnancy. The term rabbit test was first recorded in 1949 and became a common phrase in the English language. So there you go. If you think you're pregnant, ladies, you would take some of your urine, inject it into a rabbit, and their ovaries would change, and evidently doctors and biologists could easily see this change and say, you're pregnant. Modern pregnancy tests still operate on the basis of testing for the presence of the hormone HCG. Due to medical advances, use of a live animal is no longer required. It is a common misconception that the injected rabbit would only die if a woman, or would die only if the woman was pregnant. This led to the phrase, the rabbit died, being used as a euphemism for a positive pregnancy test. In fact, all rabbits used for the test died because they had to be surgically opened in order to examine the ovaries. Theoretically, you could keep the rabbit alive, but they didn't bother. They just killed the rabbit and checked the ovaries. So they all died. A replacement for the rabbit test involved using frogs, specifically the African clawed frog, which, like all frogs, lay eggs instead of getting pregnant, and therefore can yield results without the need to cut the animal open. All right, so there you go. There's the rabbit test. I believe I read somewhere else that this test was used until about the 70s. So I'm kind of curious if any ladies out there, you or your mother or your grandmother or someone ever used the rabbit test to check for pregnancy. I mean, I'm assuming really what they did was they just missed their periods and they said, I think I'm pregnant. So I'm not sure why. Now we just need to know right away, right? That's just the way it is. We need to know. But I just figured back in the day, they just, I don't know. I guess there's always reasons people want to know for sure, right? So there you go. So I don't really understand the Aerosmith lyrics there. If you look at the lyrics of that whole song, they're wacky, and people argue about the lyrics. I checked this, and people try to figure out what the lyrics mean, and they're just kind of nonsense lyrics. But it seems to be he's implying that there's a pregnant woman by saying that phrase, the rabbit done died. There are other places where the rabbit test were mentioned in popular culture. So it was featured in a 1978 episode of MASH, for those of you who watched that show, with the doctors removing the ovaries from a pet rabbit in order to perform the test and keep the rabbit alive. So is a pet rabbit, so they did not want to kill the rabbit, and yet they were trying to remove the ovaries. So it was episode of MASH. And in a 1962 episode of Dick Van Dyke Show, for those of you even older who remember that show, Laura Petrie informs her husband Rob that she is pregnant by saying, the rabbit died. So evidently it was so well known, you could just flippantly mention it in the show, in 1962 say the rabbit died and everyone knows what you meant. Now, if you said that, I think, the rabbit died, nobody would know what that means. Or most young people would know. I didn't know what it meant. Okay, so there you go about the rabbit test. I did find another link about the rabbit test. With some more information, I will put that in the show notes. And that's it for today. Remember, this will eventually show up on YouTube a few days after it comes out on the podcast. If you want to have someone watch it, go to runsmith.net for more information about me and all my social media information and my coaching services. Could you please go to iTunes and leave a rating and a review? Please, please, please. Do something. Send yourself an email right now or something. So next time you're in front of the computer, leave a rating and review on iTunes. Please, that would help. And email me if you have any questions, comments, suggestions whatsoever. kemsmith1@gmail.com. CHEM-Smith1. kemsmith1@gmail.com. Any feedback whatsoever. And that's it. So this is Run Smith Enterprises presenting topics in endurance sports. Signing out. Have a fun workout.